In this section of the tutorial, I now want to bring in some people for context and adjust some of the rendering settings just to show you some of the results. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring in, I'm just going to go to my plan view, hit T for top, turn off the grid, Alt W full screen. I want to bring in some really good 3D people from a company called renderpeople. So I'm going to go import, merge, and these are my render people. There's two people I've got here. The great thing about the render people is you can have a high level detail person or a low level. So 30 kilobits is the low, 100 for the high. I'm going to bring in both of them here. They come in texture map ready to go inside of Vray, and here they are. So you can see when I select on those people, there's a lot of vertices, but they are highly detailed. They're really good. So we go to our camera view, so C for camera, and choose the physical camera, and turn off the wireframe. Here in, let me just hide that one. Here inside of the environment, you can see the people and how they're looking in shaded. I can go to realistic, and this will just start to calc on 1 second, and you can start to see the textures and the lighting all working in one. It may take a little bit of time to calc, so let me just go with the shaded. So this is really cool. So you've got these people ready to go. You don't have to do too much to them. Straight out of the box, they're perfect. So in this case, I don't want to rotate this person around a little bit so they're looking dead at the mirror. In a past workflow, they were looking on an angle and they just distorted in the mirror. And yeah, that's pretty much, that's all you need to do. So people are there, the lighting's there, and I'll show you how they render inside of Max with the Vray rendering engine. So we're going to use the progressive calc here. Let me just run that. So it's just loading in the bitmaps. They're pretty sharp, and these people look really good inside the scene. The great thing about this is I don't need to go into Photoshop afterwards and muck around with adding people and trying to get the angles right. I can just rotate them inside of 3ds Max. I can get some great results and some real-time feedback with this progressive rendering engine. Another thing I did at the end of my last tutorial was change the background here from being the standard default sky to an HDRI sky, and you can see there's some of that showing in the background, and that will just change the color that's been shown inside the scene. So I'm getting some pretty good results here, and I'm really happy with the people. What I want to do next, I'm just going to escape out of that, is just show you some different types of rendering techniques here to give you different results. So a couple of things I want to do. I'm going to just select that camera, and I'm going to move my exposure gain to 8, let a lot of light to the space. I want to also now go to my Vray settings, and I'm going to move to some other settings that I've used in the past. So I'm not going to muck around with global switches. There is the image sampler, the anti-aliasing. This is like the pixels around the edge of the person or the objects. This is progressive. You could use fixed, or you could use adaptive or adaptive subdivision, which is quite popular, or the other one was progressive. I'm going to use adaptive. And the reason I want to use adaptive is because I've got a few little bits of details here that I want to show up. Because it's a minimalist bathroom, the light's got to bounce around. I want these edges to be sharp. So I'm going to keep it at 24. I'll drop it down to 18 just for now. And there's a color threshold setting here. Just leave them on default. We have a global DMC. I'm not going to do too much in here. This is just the samples. Environment I'm not going to muck around with. You could actually, if you wanted to include a GI environment, you could go to materials here. We could do this for now, and you can load this in. There's numerous tutorials on this. This is just to do a bit more with the lighting inside the scene. It's not really necessary, but some people prefer to use it. And then the color mapping, Reinhardt's pretty good. You can manipulate this. If you hover over here, there's a information on what each one means. So Reinhardt is pretty good. A lot of people like to use linear multiply or perhaps exponential. I'll go to linear for now, and this is a gamma setting of 2.2. This will push lighting in there. If you leave it on 1, it will go very dark. And then there's a few multipliers here to muck around with. So we'll leave that as is. We won't do too much. You could tick on linear workflow if you want to leave that on. And then there's camera settings here. This is more for doing field of view, depth of field, and motion blur. Next one is GI. So primary engine is brute force. A lot of people like to use a radiance map and light cache. This just tends to be more used by the industry. We can leave it on medium for now. Subdivisions, you could crank this up to 60 and 40. I'll just leave it on 60 and 20 at the moment. And finally, with our subdivisions for our light cache, I'll leave it on 200. I'll just leave it low at the moment. And a couple other tools here I just wanted to show is turning on the expert. When you turn on the expert for the global illumination here, you get ambient occlusion. In the olden days, we used to have to do render passes to show ambient occlusion. This is like the sort of dirt building up in the corner. You can now do this inside of Vray. At the moment it's 0.1 of a meter. I want it to be maybe 0.04, for example, just to give us a little bit of dark edges around the corner for more realism. That's on expert, and we're just going to show show curve phase, and I will just turn that one to expert just to see if there's a few more settings. Alright, I'm not going to muck around with too many of these items. Just going to leave them on default. The Chaos Group guys have a lot of tutorials on more advanced settings here, and I'm going to move my memory limit up to 10,000 and bucket width down to 32, and that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so we're still doing quite a small render. Should render reasonably quickly. I just close out of some of these. My last render time was about a minute, so please excuse the background noise. Hit render, and now we're starting to get something looking a little bit more interesting. So we'll just let that calc, and you can see the color and the lighting in that space is looking a little more photorealistic. If I just zoom out a little bit, we can see the information on the passes. So this one is actually doing a pre-pass of 3, and then we're finally doing the cleanup of the bucket. And again, I'll zoom in, and you can click on this tool here to actually track the pixels. So if I want to see how the anti-aliasing is looking around the hair on this render person character, we can let that run. And it's looking reasonably sharp for a pixel render of 600. And I'm now starting to get a bit more lighting actually bouncing into those little spaces. And up here, the subtle ambient occlusion from the Vray rendering engine. And what's interesting here is you've got this light coming in across the mirror there. That's actually just a reflection of what's happening out there in the background. So that's fascinating. Whereas this component here is actually reflecting the ceiling. So it's not something weird that's happening there. It's just the way the design is. And there's a lot of brightness here out in the background because I do have that HDRI image illuminating the background. Maybe it's a bit too much, so I could go back into the scene and drop the overall multiplier just so it's not too much. And of course I've changed my camera to let in more light. So it's looking good for some things, it's not looking good for others. So you can see the people are looking really good, but maybe the lighting is blown out a little bit. So there's kind of a few fine-tuning tricks you could do here. If you don't want to have the people go back to looking dark, like if you're happy with this illumination, and I am, I want to keep it the same, but I just want to drop the light settings here. So I'm going to just cancel out, and we will duplicate this scene. So we'll just, where are we? Clone, I want to clone that window. Duplicate, I just duplicated the max buffer. And I'm just going to drop those down just for 1 second and just go to my lighting. And you can do it via a light list. I'm just going to select them. Now this one is set to 30. I'm going to drop it down to 1 just for what we're doing, and go to my materials. And this lighting is actually set up to 20. I'll drop it down to 10. I should drop it down to 4. And now, when we bring up those render windows here, just go and restore that one and restore this one. And now when we go to do a render here, and we'll see a new window pop up. That's just the copy here on the right. Where's my render window? Here it is. Now, by just making those adjustments, we're starting to see the lighting change a little bit. So this is what I call the fine-tuning process. Again, I can start to adjust my camera a little bit to let more or less light in, but you can see the difference with the lighting here coming from the IES file versus the lighting coming into the space now, and then how it's affecting those characters. So again, this is what I call the fine-tuning part of the process. So with that, I'll finish here, and I'll finish up with post-production in the next part of the tutorial with a fine-tuned render, and I'll show you the settings for that as well.